What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Adventure Outpost. Another weekend has come and gone, and it is once again time to talk those juicy box office numbers. All eyes were on Dungeons & Dragons this weekend to see how it would perform up against the heavy hitters of March, to see if it was going to be able to hold on to a #1 victory and thus create a trifecta of a new #1 movie every weekend in March. And like the Joker would say to Batman, you didn't disappoint. That's right, Dungeons & Dragons was able to complete the fucking mantra here in March of a new movie every week. We had a new #1 movie every week here in March. This is absolutely insane. Huge heavy hitters this month in March, and it was one of the wildest rides so far of the year to watch as each new movie managed to stake its claim here in the box office. And we're going to dive into all that good juicy numbers up next. Now, as always, quickly before we dive into all that good stuff, if you like talking about movies, if you like talking about box office numbers, consider hitting that subscribe button, consider hitting that like button. It's how we help this channel grow. But with all that out of the way, let us dive into all of the good stuff here in the box office. We start, as always, with our chart for the 2023 season to take a look at and see just how we're doing overall this year, week to week. We take a look at this chart right now. And if you look here in our 13th week of the year, week of March 31st to April 2nd, we had collectively $92 million in the top 10 for a 17.3% decrease over the previous week. Last week, we were able to hit over that $100 million mark for the blockbuster, but it wasn't enough this week with the second week of John Wick with Dungeons & Dragons to keep us over that $100 million mark. So we dropped just below it for $92 million. We really need to get these movies hitting their marks. It's crazy that in the second week of John Wick that had such a great fucking holdover and had such great reviews, and even this weekend with Dungeons & Dragons, which also had A- cinema score and really good positive word of mouth, was not able to hit over $100 million for this weekend in the top 10. That's not great. Obviously, I think we're going to hit it next week with Super Mario Brothers coming out, and I'm sure Air will be able to help add to that total, but we need to keep hitting these $100 million weekends, especially for big movies like this. March should have been a layup for every week to be a $100 million opening, a $100 million weekend every week in the box office. But here we are. Like I always say, the box office doesn't give a fuck what you want or what you expect. Box office is going to do what it does best, and that is fuck with your expectations. So here we are, just under $100 million again, but that isn't to say that there wasn't some good stuff here in the box office. Like we were talking about, Dungeons & Dragons able to hit at #1, able to have better than expectations here in the box office. Still has a bit of a ways to go to be profitable, to be considered a resounding success, to be ready to be a franchise, but this is a great start for a franchise that has had a difficult time translating to the box office here of the movie world. So we're going to take a look now here at our top 10. And Dungeons & Dragons, as we said here, takes #1 with $38 million of a $150 million budget. So like we said, still has a ways to go before it's going to be considered profitable, but a $38 million opening for a really hard fucking format here in Dungeons & Dragons to try and translate, that is a big resounding success there. $38 million is nothing to sneeze at. That is excellent weekend. Hopefully with positive word of mouth, this movie is continuing to make money week over week, and it has solid legs where it is able to make its budget back. All eyes will be looking at worldwide as well to see just how well it does overall to make this a viable franchise in the worldwide box office. In second place, John Wick Chapter 4 drops 61.8%. That is a pretty high fucking total. I thought that would be a little bit less, that this would have a bit better of a holdover considering how fucking good this movie was and how good the positive word of mouth was. I attribute it to it that it had such a big, huge opening weekend that it was just expected that this number would be this high to drop the second weekend. Hopefully this movie as well has some great legs and just continues to make money hand over fist. It took in $28 million to bring its total domestic haul to $122 million off of a $100 million budget. This movie we'll be talking about a little bit later with its $122 million domestic haul now in week 2 that adds it to a very special chart that we've been charting here, and we will take a look at that in just a minute. In third place, debuting in #3, is His Only Son, a religious movie. Takes in $5.5 million off of a budget that we have no idea about. It's a movie I didn't even know existed until they said we were getting it in theaters, and you know, that's not too bad. 5.5. It takes advantage here of the Easter weekend. You always get these type of religious movies dropping around this time to do a little bit of business. In fourth place, we've got Scream 6 in its fourth week, dropping 36.4%. Takes in $5 million to bring its total domestic haul to $98 million off of a $35 million budget. It looks like this movie is going to clear the $100 million mark. It's going to be a domestic blockbuster movie, which is a shame because I did not have it on my domestic blockbuster bingo chart that we're going to look at later for some other movies, so I really screwed the pooch here on that one. And then rounding out the top 5 is Creed 3 in its fifth week, dropping 38.9%. Still takes in $5 million despite all the Jonathan Majors hoopla going on. It takes in $148 million domestically off of a $75 million budget. A movie not hitting up to par is Shazam! Fury of the Gods in its third week, already dropping into sixth place. It drops 50.8%, takes in $4.6 million to bring its total domestic haul to $53 million off of a $125 million budget. This movie is going to be considered one of the box office bombs of the year. I considered that this movie would I considered it a safe, sure bet that it would be a $100 million domestic blockbuster. I am wildly off course here. Scream 6 is going to end up getting in. Shazam isn't. I wildly missed the mark on those two movies. Another one to look at, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I thought Dungeons & Dragons would end up being the biggest box office bomb of the year, and it looks like so far Shazam is blowing that one right out of the water. So it's insane to look at. I'm flabbergasted on that front. I really thought Shazam was going to do better than it ended up doing, but it just goes to show that with all the hoopla behind DC, that this movie was just not going to be up to par. All eyes now are going to be to see what Aquaman does, knowing that that movie is going to have no ramifications going forward. I think The Flash is going to end up being the only one to do any business as far as the DCEU goes right now. It's just insane to look at. In seventh place, another debuting movie. We've got 1001, debuts in seventh, takes in $1.8 million. In eighth place, somehow still hanging out in the top 10, is 65 in its fourth week, dropping 50.6%. It takes in $1.5 million to bring its total domestic haul to $30 million of a $45 million budget. So this movie is just struggling to get over that initial domestic budget right there. Definitely going to end up being not so much of a bomb, but definitely a poor performance. In ninth place, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in its seventh week drops 48.8%. Takes in $1.2 million to bring its total domestic haul to $212 million off of a $200 million budget. Just barely over its initial budget there. This movie, another one, definitely not a bomb, but definitely a disappointing expectation of what they were hoping for to kick off Phase 5 and the new villain, Kang the Conqueror. And then rounding us out in 10th place is Jesus Revolution in its sixth week, dropping 49.2%. Takes in $1 million even to bring its total domestic haul to $50 million off of a $15 million budget. Now, as always, we'd like to take a look at our fallen heroes. These are our heroes that did their time in the box office but have now bowed out for greener passages. We have 3 movies that have bowed out of the top 10 this week, including one absolutely huge stellar performance, a Hall of Fame performance. We take a look here now at the chart. You got Cocaine Bear after 5 weeks on the chart bows out, Champions after 3 bows out, and after an absolutely Hall of Fame worthy run, after 15 weeks on the chart, Avatar: The Way of Water finally bows out of the top 10. You guys did your time. You had your say. You made your money. But now it's time for you to say adieu, and we will see you in the realm of physical media. And as always, we salute you. Now here at the channel, we like to take a look at our top 10 worldwide and our top 10 domestic for the year. Now, as I've said, we will and still are not taking a look here in the 2022 ones because Avatar, even though it is out of the top 10, is still collecting money, still making itself a little bit of ways. So we're going to wait to show the final tallies for the top 10 worldwide of 2022 and the top 10 domestic of 2022 until Avatar has fully had its say and has bowed out of not only the top 10, but the box office in general, and we can see those final tallied numbers. But we will, however, continue to look at our 2023 charts. So we will look first here at our top 10 worldwide for 2023. We take a look here at this chart. In first place, we got Full River Red with $673 million. The Wandering Earth 2 with $603 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in third with $471 million, really struggling to get over that $500 million mark. Creed 3 with $258. John Wick Chapter 4 rounding out the top 5 with $244 million. Boonie Bears 220, Megan with 176 million, Scream 6 with 147 million, Hidden Blade with 138 million, and rounding out the top 10 is Deep Sea with 136 million. We also take a look here at our top 10 domestic for 2023. Rounding us out in first place is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania with 212 million, Creed 3 with 148 million, John Wick Chapter 4 with 122 million, Scream 6 with 98, just about to pass that $100 million mark, Megan in the top 5 with 95 million, Cocaine Bear with 63, Shazam Fury of the Gods with 53 million, Jesus Revolution with 50 million, 80 for Brady with 39 million, and debuting in the top 10 in the 10th spot is Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves with 38.5 million. Its debut in the top 10 knocks out our last place 10th spot of Knock at the Cabin. So we will see you later, Knock at the Cabin. One chart that we could finally bring back into the fold is our blockbuster status chart. This is the chart that looks at all of the movies that have been able to make $100 million domestically. That is the signal bearer for a blockbuster status movie is crossing the $100 million threshold domestically. So we take a look at all of our movies that are able to do it so far in the year for 2023. We hadn't seen it since the beginning of the year with Creed 3, but we are finally able to add another movie here to this chart. We take a look now at the chart here, and if you look, we got at the top of the chart Avatar: The Way of Water with 681 million was enough to cross the blockbuster threshold times 6. 6 times this movie has made blockbuster status here. It's just absolutely incredible to see. Ant-Man and the Wasp at 212 million times 2 has been able to hit that blockbuster status 2 times over. We've got Creed 3 in third with 148 million, and now debuting on the chart after 2 weeks in theaters is John Wick Chapter 4 with 122 million. Now, we still aren't able to take a look at our other chart that usually goes along with this, and that is the movie that is able to hold on to the number 1 spot consecutively more than just 1 week, 2 weeks, and more, and we still have not been able to have one. Our last one was Ant-Man that held the weekends of February 17th and February 24th. We have yet to have a movie that has been able to consecutively hold on to the number 1 spot since February 24th. Absolutely crazy. March has just been a whirlwind of events, just everything, just every week, constantly a new movie, just vying for number 1. And it's going to continue again next week because I'm sure Super Mario Brothers is now about to take the number 1 seed. The interesting thing we'll be able to see for the rest of April, will any of these mid-budget April movies that are coming out be able to knock Super Mario Brothers off its perch? Or will Super Mario Brothers finally be the first movie in over a month to be able to join this chart? That is going to be an exciting thing to watch for the month of April. Now we take a look, as always, at our 2023 top 10 chart riders. These are our movies that have had the best legs in 2023. We chart up and we follow along to see which is able to hang out in the top 10 the longest. So at the end of the year, we can tally it up and see which movies had the best legs for the year. We take a look now at this chart, and as you can see at the bottom of the top 10 in number 10th place is Plane with 5 weeks, Cocaine Bear in 9th, dropping out of the top 10 this past week. So now it is locked in at 5 weeks. You see the asterisk right next to that. Creed 3 able to hang out in the top 10 still. It is now at 5 weeks in the top 10. Missing and Megan both locked in at 6 weeks apiece. Jesus Revolution at fucking 6 weeks right there. Who would have ever thought Jesus Revolution would be up so high right now? It is in the 10th spot this past weekend, so all eyes will be able to look at next week to see if this movie is also going to get locked in at 6 weeks or if it's going to be able to hang out for 1 more week to see if it's going to be able to do anything here. We got a big 2 new movies coming out next week, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the top 10. Ant-Man and the Wasp adds another week. It is now at 7 weeks. A Man Called Otto still right now has the best fucking legs for any movie that was released in 2023 at 8 weeks. It's locked in right there. And then Puss in Boots, a holdover from 2022, still able to have a resounding 11 weeks in the charts here in 2023. It's locked in at 11 weeks. And now Avatar: The Way of Water, after finally bowing out of the top 10 this past week, adds 12 weeks in the legs here in 2023. 12 weeks at the top. That is going to be a resoundingly hard number to beat. All of these movies have a lot of work cut out for them to beat 12 weeks, even to beat 11 weeks with Puss in Boots. The closest one right now is Ant-Man and the Wasp at 7 weeks, and that movie is in 9th place right now. So it's very likely that that movie can be out of the top 10 by as early as next week. So it is insane to see like what is going to be able to even reach 11 and 12 weeks this year, especially once you get to the summer. Everything's vying for a lot of opportunities there, so stuff is not hanging around as long as it normally does. So it's very possible that we end this year with 2 movies from 2022 that will have the best legs in 2023. It's just absolutely insane to look at. It's crazy to chart along with, and it's going to be a wild ride to watch and see if any movie from this year is able to dethrone either of those movies. And that'll do it for all of us here at the charts this week. It was a crazy weekend. We were going to look at my blockbuster status chart, but we kind of already dove into that, looking at the other blockbuster one, which actually shows where everything laid. So instead of showing you again my picks for the blockbuster status chart, we just stuck with the one that had blockbuster status because all we added was John Wick. So now I get to add a little money sign next to John Wick. I am coming up horribly with Shazam. Shazam is not going to cross that $100 million mark, so that's going to be my first big oof of 2023 in the blockbuster status realm. Scream is going to pass 100 million, so that's going to be my second oomph as that movie's going to get in. So right now I am way off course in those 2 movies in March, but so far, other than that, we are pretty on the money. Ant-Man, of course, crossed it. Creed 3 crossed it. Shazam crossed it. Not Shazam crossed it. John Wick crossed it. The next movie to be looking at is Super Mario Brothers. That is my next sure thing. I think that's absolutely a sure thing. It is going to be very interesting to watch. I think this movie could debut at a $100 million weekend. I think it's entirely possible that this movie can do an absolutely insane amount of money. It's spring break in a lot of places here domestically. The whole entire Northeast is off right now. This movie gets a leg up coming out on Wednesday. Obviously, we're still only going to look at everything. The 5-day totals and the 3-day totals. The 3-day totals is where we really shine in and see because that's where you do the majority of your business. But I definitely think 5-day total, absolutely, I think will be over $100 million. It's going to be interesting to see what the 3-day total is. But I think this movie is going to do fucking shit tons of money because it is an absolute 4-quadrant movie. Not only are you going to get families, but you got young kids that play Mario. You got kids from my generation that grew up on Mario. You got kids even older than me that grew up on Mario. Mario has been around for a long time. So you are going to get a lot of generational, just overage here from just multiple generations that are all going to want to go and check out this movie. Super Mario Brothers fans, Luigi's Mansions fans, Mario Kart fans, Donkey Kong fans, this movie, I think, is going to be the first, surefire, insane hit of 2023. I think this movie is going to do absolutely insane numbers, and it's going to be a wild ride here at the box office to watch along with it. It's going to suck to work it. I'm going to hate this. Is going to be absolutely brutal at the theater working it this weekend, but it's going to be worth it so we can check and we can see what those totals are going to be at the end because this is going to be this is probably going to be the first wild weekend of 2023, so it's going to be absolutely crazy to chart along with it. And I hope you'll come join me back here next Sunday as we take a look and we see just what the fallout was from the insanity of Super Mario Brothers. So a lot of questions to be answered coming next week. Join me all back here on Sunday and Monday when we go over all of that good stuff. But that'll do it for this episode. Until the next one, you have been you, I have been me. These are the movies that we love so much. And until next time, I'll see you at the movies.